Okay, welcome back to Mr. Rocks. Today we're going to go ahead and add some code to an enemy, a movie clip that's on the stage. If I look at my stage, the movie clip is already on here, and it's a very simple movie clip. What I want to do is create code for this movie clip, and so we're going to create a class. The movie clip itself, if I look in the library, is called enemy, and if I want to see the code for this movie clip, I look down here on the bottom tab. There's a little circle with an I in it. If I click on that, I see that I come into symbol properties, and I've got my enemy name and my class name are the same. If I want to go in and edit this, I can just click on this pencil. I believe this works with CS5 and above, but if I click on here and go into Flash Professional, I've already got this guy started. And so just to save time, I wanted to go ahead and get moving on this. So let's go ahead on in here and take a look what we've got. I've already put in my constructor code. Actually, let's back up to the top. This is a package, and I've imported other files that I'm going to need for this. I've included flash.display.movieclip, flash.events.event, so I can use my event listeners, and I've also got geom, because my waypoints are going to be the point class, which is in the geometry class. So in any case, we'll go ahead and take class enemy is the name of my class, and notice that it extends movie clips so that all of the functionality of movie clips will be applied to my enemy, or can be applied, I should say. And also I've created a variable in here that can be seen throughout the entire class. So this is enemy speed, and as I move down, I'm going to go ahead and look at my constructor function. Two things in here. I've got my enemy speed. I set it to a value. So up here I create the variable. Since it's not a class, it's a primitive type, I don't have to use the keyword new, but it just basically creates the name enemy speed, sets up the space in memory according to the type, and then down here I'm going to put a value inside of my constructor function. I'm going to load a 3 for enemy speed. Now everything in Flash is driven by event listeners, and this event listener is listening for every time I enter the frame. Every time I enter a frame, the Flash is going to throw an event called enter frame, and I'm going to go to this function that I've created called move enemy. So public function move enemy, it takes in a parameter. All my event listeners are going to send a parameter, so I have to receive that, and I'm not going to return anything, so I use the keyword void. Now the first thing that I want to do inside this function is I want to go ahead and point the enemy towards the waypoint. Actually, my waypoints don't exist yet, so that's going to be slightly different, but that's okay. For some reason, this guy is not showing up. Well, that is very strange. Okay, anyway, we'll come back to that later. Maybe I'll go ahead and delete this guy for now. Okay, so the variable dx is going to be for horizontal movement, and I'm going to go ahead and set up a waypoint, and for right now I'll just go ahead and say 200 minus this dot x. So basically it's going to take the point 200 on the screen and subtract that from the current x location of my movie clip. Now I'm going to replace that 200 with something a little bit more interesting very soon. But if I come in here and do the same thing for my distance on the y-axis, I use dy. Let's go ahead and say 300. So I'm going to be moving from the point 200, 300. I'm going to go ahead and say this dot y. Now this refers to the class that I'm in, which is enemy, and so it's going to take whatever enemy calls this code. It's going to go ahead and look at the point 200, 300. It's going to take that location, and it's going to go ahead and subtract from that the x and the y location of that particular movie clip. Okay, that's good. Now, to move on, I want to go ahead and take this rotation. Okay, so my movie clip has a rotation. That's a property. And that rotation property, I'm going to go ahead and set that to I'm going to go ahead and say math dot, and I want to go ahead and set this according to the arctangent. And so for some reason the arctan function in Flash has some problems, and so they've created an arctan2 function. But basically this is going to take the arctangent. If I take the horizontal distance and the vertical distance and I load them into here, all I've got to do is take dy, and then I'm going to take dx, and that's going to give me the radian value of the angle, the tangent angle according to the opposite, and the horizontal values of that triangle. And so what I need to do is I need to convert this back into degree radians, because rotation is in degrees. This guy's going to return a radian value. So if you remember from geometry or pre-calc or wherever we teach that, all we have to do is come in here and we're going to go ahead and divide that by pi. And to do pi in Actionscript, you just call that out from the math class. And then we're going to go ahead and multiply that by 180 degrees. So math pi times 180, and that's going to give me a rotation value. And then all I have to do is actually move it. So I'm going to go ahead and say this dot x is equal to, and I'm going to go ahead and say this dot x, and I want to add to that the change. Now, the rotation is given to me by the dx and the dy, so I'm going to be pointing to my waypoint. And so I'm going to be taking this dot x and adding to it a horizontal value and a vertical value. So let's go ahead and do horizontal first. And the horizontal value we're going to find just by taking our cosine. So we say math dot cosine. And we're going to go ahead and in math dot cosine, I just have to take the cosine of the degree value of my movie clip, which is this dot rotation. Okay, so that's pretty simple. The problem is that now this dot rotation, it takes in a degree value, right? Actually, it wants a radian value, and I'm sending in degrees. So what I have to do is transform this guy into radians. So I'm constantly going back from radians to degrees, and in this case from degrees to radians. This dot rotation is degrees, so to change degrees to radians, what I need to do is divide by 180, kind of the inverse of what I just did up on top, and multiply that by math dot pi. Okay, and that should do it. Now the only other thing I need to do here is multiply this guy by the speed, and the larger the speed value, obviously, the faster my guy will go. So I've already created my variable up on top called enemy speed. I think we set that to 3, and so this guy should be done. So we go to speed, and now all I have to do to finish this up, I've moved my guy on the x-axis, that's the horizontal value. I want to do the same thing on the vertical value, so I'm going to say y, y, and change this guy to sine. And same thing, I'm putting in a degree value, so I'm going to convert that to radians, and then I'm going to go ahead and multiply it by the same speed, enemy speed, and now I'm ready to go.